Good evening, everybody. Welcome along for another Blether. How are we all at home? Love to see the chat firing up.
Yeah, that photograph of our guest is one of the nicest ones I've seen. It's such a sweet, candid photograph of our guest.
It's
I
a
love
natural
that.
kind of pose, isn't it?
It is. It's really good.
It's
Awesome.
Yes, of course. Canoeing down the Spey.
Yes,
Up the
I'm
Spey.
excited for the chat tonight. I like the variety of different guests we got on. I'm excited for this one. It's going to be good, and so many people have got such nice things to say about him. So,
just chatting in the green room before we came on, almost forgetting to go live because we Dave started telling the stories. It's like, oh crap, we have to just like hold that thought, keep it for the show.
That's cool.
How are you
today? Good, actually. I've had an interesting week. Just back from holiday, or mini break in Denmark with the other half, and straight back into an unusual week at work. We had a workshop day and we had a brand filming and photography day. So it's been good. Like you come back from like 5-6 days off and there is like 1,000,005 emails in your inbox. And
yeah.
Wish you'd never come back. But
I have. This is going to scare you. I've got my tab is open. I'm going to tell you how many emails I have in my inbox that are unread. 46,040 unread emails.
Oh, Mr. Stewart, that's terrifying. Well, I hope none of my ones are unread, but that's a scary number.
I get a lot of spam. Well, not spam, but it is. It's like, we'll buy our casks and as in investment and all that kind of stuff. So it's probably about 40,000 of them are them. Jerry was asking, was the brand Photoshop with Mike or the other job? It wasn't a Blether brand, I'm afraid. No, it was the other place.
That would have been awesome, but no, it was with the main job. So that's always really interesting. I love watching a professional photographer work because, I mean, you can look at a bottle shot. Do you think they've just put a bottle on a table and taken a photograph? But like glass is really hard to photograph. So, and you'll know this, Mike, from having Joe in to do pictures and Tony sometimes does some pictures too. No, it was I don't know where they came from actually. It was somebody the brand team hired in. But yeah, just like the way they have to set up screens and curtains and lights, and there's just so much work that goes behind it. I've got a lot of time for it. I love watching it all happen. So no, all to do with we'll get out there quickly. Glengeary, take a dram, guys. If you're still playing a Glengeary game, well done.
We haven't talked game in a while, have we?
Say again?
We haven't talked about the game in a while.
We haven't, no. But yeah, I'm sure the viewers at home are still playing the Glengeary game. #responsible drinking.
Mark Watt has said he canoed down the Spey for 4 days during Spirit of Speyside and it was one of the drunkest 4 days of my life.
I mean, are we actually talking about canoeing, or is it like that episode of Winnie the Pooh where you just fell in the river on your back and just spent 4 days bobbing down the Spey? That's pretty good going. To be doing that while drunk is pretty impressive. That's quite it.
Are you actually canoeing though? Yeah, but are you just in a boat floating down the river?
Either way, it sounds awesome.
It does. So let's get our guest on. Talking of canoeing down the Spey, and we'll get Dave to tell us all about Spirit on the Spey. Let's bring Dave in. Good evening, Dave. How are you?
Good evening. Not too bad, thank you. Thank you for inviting me on. I feel honoured. I was looking at your pictures and introduction, and there's some amazing whiskey heroes on there. So I feel like a mere minion compared to all the faces I've seen on there.
Not at all.
Yeah,
I'm sure you've met half of them and worked. I'm sure you've worked with most of them on there.
Particularly scary Glenfiddich ambassador. I saw sort of a bearded guy that thinks he's James Bond, I think. But yeah. I think his name's Mark. Yeah. Anyway, nice to be here. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us. Looking forward to hearing some great stories. You must have toured with some real characters in your time in the Spey.
Yeah, I mean, I think in some of the talks I've been asked to give in various times, I always talk about being privileged. I feel very privileged to almost have followed the path I've followed in my life. I mean, apart from anything else, I was brought up in Stonehaven, and that was a great place to be brought up. And I always say that was a privilege to be born in Stoney, because, you know, that was probably where my love for whiskey, or my interest in whiskey actually started. Because we used to go fishing on the River Spey as boys, and we had the Glenury distillery there, and we used to wonder what this corky kind of smell was you got from a distillery, but we quite liked it. We liked inhaling that kind of, I think we're probably a mash there, and that was really good. And then my dad, he was involved in agriculture, and one of his sidelines about his main job was he used to buy and sell draft, and he used to go to I think it's the no longer Northport distillery in Brechin, and some days he would actually follow the lorry from the distillery to the farm, because his farmers weren't always good at paying him. So I really liked if I was in the car with him, because you had the barley brie coming out the back of this lorry as it drove up the farm roads, and again you got that smell into the car, and I was quite fond of that as well. So yeah, so I think my early days. The other thing with Stonehaven is that, you know, there's an outdoor swimming pool. I mean, I think my element is water anyway, and we had the swimming pool, and then we always had access to boats with a brilliant sea cadet unit. And then this guy, our local community worker, wonderful guy called Bill Sheriffs, and he started his kayaking in the Dee. But I think the pivotal moment for me was about 1965, when I actually was taken to the Spey. And I've said to people before that I think my life changed then. That you know, I was a mere teenager, and I know you're not supposed to genderdize in this day and age, so I apologize if I'm offending anybody, but people know I call the Spey Lady Spey, because I fell in love with her as an impressionable teenager, and well, I still love her now, and I think she's quite fond of me as well. And everyone I introduce her to, they fall in love with her. So that was my introduction to the Spey. So yeah, I feel very privileged, and yeah, canoeing the river, you know, and I think, you know, I'm sort of stepping away from the main line now, working with guests, which was a really hard decision. But I might take this opportunity to thank any of my whiskey trading partners who happen to be listening in tonight, to thank them for all their support, because when I first got involved with the whiskey side, then it wasn't always easy. There were people who were very suspicious of me. They're saying, but you're a canoeist, what's this got to do with whiskey? But then the pivotal thing really was that it was actually a chap called Andrew Forrester, who was the UK ambassador for the Balvenie, and he actually approached me, and he thought that because my business was a kind of a handcrafted, homespun kind of business, that was very like Balvenie, and he was the one that invited me to kind of become involved with him, and he was the first person to. I felt very privileged. He gave me some Balvenie stock to share with my guests, and that's kind of how it all started. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, so yeah, so obviously the water was your first love, and so you canoed or kayaked just for pleasure, or were you already teaching people by then, you know, how to do that?
Well, I think, I mean, because of the Sea Cadets, we were actually teaching outdoor pursuits even as teenagers, because we learned to sail early on, and then we got Sea Cadet instructional qualifications to sail. And then with this chap, Bill Sheriffs, he got us to a good level of kayaking, and that was mainly on the River Dee into Aberdeen and so on. A weekend we'd paddle from Petarch to Bankery to Aberdeen and that sort of thing. But then I went to the States in 1973 when I finished my first stint at Murray House. And when I went there, I felt a bit of a fraud, because I went there as a sailing and canoeing instructor. When I got there, I went down to the waterfront to find that they had these really nice little boats called sunfishes, which are a bit like our toppers, and I could teach in them. And then I realised that they didn't have kayaks; they had canoes, and I had never canoed before. So I went to see the manager of or the owner of the camp, and said, "Look, Walt, I'm here in a bit of a false pretense, because I can't canoe. I can kayak, but I can't canoe." So he just said to this all-American boy with a sort of the camp T-shirt on, "Hey Garth, go and teach him to canoe." So I was taken out the waterfront and I was taught to canoe of an evening. And what was I doing the next day? I was teaching canoeing. So, but it was fantastic. And they say that's the best way to learn something is to teach it. So that's when I started teaching actual canoeing. And then over the piece, I just added to my qualifications. But probably the pivotal thing there is that I worked at Lag and Lear, which is the Lothian Outdoor Centre at Feshy Bridge. And that was another privilege to be there because you couldn't teach anything unless you actually had the qualification. So we probably were, and this is not meant to be bumptious, by the way, it's just the way it was, that we're probably some of the most highly or well qualified in a wide range, not necessarily the pinnacle of different pursuits, but certainly we had to have a basic qualification in all the pursuits that we taught. So because there we canoed, we kayaked, we skied, we Nordic skied, we snowboarded, we climbed, we orienteered, and so that was just a brilliant place to be. And that's where my instructional life really started. Yeah, with Lag and Lear. Yeah, but when I went to the States, I didn't want to canoe after that. I didn't want to kayak after that. Canoeing was my first love. But you couldn't get open boats in this country till into the 1980s. And I think it must have been about, almost it was certainly 1980 odd before I got a boat. And then Lag and Lear got canoes as well. And that's when I started running trips on the Spey for Lag and Lear. And then when I left Lag and Lear in 2000 to become self-employed, and that's when I formed Spirit of the Spey. Yeah, so that's kind of how it kind of went. Yeah,
that's quite a story. Wow. You must be the only person that's doing that, surely. Sort of canoe. Can I ask a layman's question of, and this, I'm going to sound really stupid. What's the difference between a canoe and a kayak? Is a kayak a single person vessel?
The way I explain, no, because you get double kayaks and you get, the canoes are made for doubles or triples, really. But if you think about it, the Inuit people, they are in kayaks and they're strapped into their kayaks. So when they go hunting for seals and walruses, whatever else they're going to go for, if they capsize, they have to roll. That's why I know we're not supposed to call them Eskimos these days, but it's an Eskimo roll, and they need to be able to roll. If they don't roll, then they drown because they're tied into their kayaks. So the kayaks are the ones you've got the. And then a canoe is more the sort of thing you might imagine at the, again, I've got to be careful how I phrase it, the First Nations people in America paddle. Yeah. So that's the difference. So they're the big open boats, and that's what I use. And they're the best for somewhere like the Spey because you can pack so much into them. And, in my tours, then, we had big barrels, we get the food in, and everyone had a big 120-litre dry bag for their clothing and that sort of thing. And initially I used to camp, and so you're asking, does anyone else do this? Then there are other people who do it. Glenmore Lodge, for example, they do it. And there's a couple of my colleagues. I think we're all pretty friendly in the canoeing fraternity, so we kind of support each other. No one does it as well as I do. And I think they probably tell you that, actually. That's really bumptious. But no. And then the thing is, as time went on, I was asked by people in my demographic, or they said they would want to go in the Spey, but they wouldn't go at the camp because they didn't want to do that. And I thought, well, will you pay the money? Because there is a culture in our country that people want their outdoor pursuits. Probably I'm poacher turned gamekeeper, because when I was at Lag and Lear, we tried to push the prices down so that it was all inclusive and people, kids, especially from poorer families, could afford to be there. And that's what we strove to do. Whereas when I became self-employed, people would phone me up and ask to go in the Spey, and I'd tell them the price, and I'd say, "Oh, that's more expensive than Lag and Lear." And I said, "Yeah, well, I'm self-employed now. I've got to pay all my own insurances and buy my own kit and all the rest of it." And then eventually, when people came with me, the reassuring thing was that once they'd been on a trip, some of them who said expensive before they came, they then conceded it was good value. And ultimately, everything I did was the hotels, the lunches, the transport, the whole thing. I don't like the expression package tours, but that's what it was. It was a complete package, all inclusive. Yeah. So, and then people were amazed they didn't have to put their hand in a pocket, because, as well as being involved with whiskey people and being supported by distillers, I was also working with a lot of the gin distillers as well. And so I would give people maybe gin before dinner and then feed them drams after dinner. So again, the word privilege comes in, because I was very privileged to have the ability to do that. And And the hotels I worked with as well, I'd thank them because they were brilliant. I used hotels like the Grand Arms in Granton and the lovely Craggamore House, which I don't know if you know Craggamore House at all, but it's particularly special. It was built by John Smith, the distiller, in about 1864. And it's a beautiful house. It was run by a lovely couple called Tony and Helen, and Tony was a real chef. And particularly American clients, they just thought Craggamore House was just fantastic because it was so Victorian, and Tony's food was fantastic. So yeah, people just loved that. And then people like the Highlander Inn, that was just a great place to be with Tatsuya and so on. And they're such a friendly bunch there. And then also I would use the lovely Craigellachie Lodge with Jody and Scott. And the thing is, the hotels got to know me. They got to know they were going to get probably wet people arriving on their doorstep, but they were all quite forgiving of that. And then clothes would disappear to the boiler room, and then they would come back in the morning dry and this sort of stuff. And that's why it's also hard to give it up, because all these things were established. I was an envoy for about 8 distillers, and then the hotels knew me, and we got on really well together. And so it was a good life.
Such a good coming together of kind of great people working to get one goal, and that's to entertain and provide an experience. I think when you mentioned there, you're maybe slightly more expensive, but that value is seen, and I think that's what people really look for nowadays. Across the board, isn't it?
I think there's a couple of things there, Mike. I think one of the things, if you're doing something like I'm doing, then I think the key word is authenticity, and I think that's sometimes what some tourist things lack. And it was very easy to be authentic on the Spey. I mean, it's such a beautiful river. It's steeped in history, and because I had, I didn't paddle it solidly from sort of 65 all the way through. But when I was at Laganley, I was on it a lot, and I went there in 1976, and so I just got to know Speyside really well. And again, I was very privileged to be able to just learn things. And in fact, the guys on the fishery board as well, I worked quite close to them, and they were a kind of a font of all knowledge as well, because you've got people like Richard White, who's now the gillie at Macallan, and his father was a gillie before him, and so people like them give me stories and all the rest of it, so I could then pass it on to my guests, and so that was really good. So authenticity is a great part of it, but your value of money is the thing as well, and that's what people realise, that although it was expensive. I mean, when I said to people, it's almost £400 a day to be in the river with me, people would say, "Oh, that's expensive." And for me, as a sort of a kind of a not a mean Scot, but a modest Scot, I think that's a lot of money. But then half of the money I took in went to the hotels, because I mean, bed and breakfast is not a cheap way to holiday. Let's put it that way. But I was provided everything. There was dinner, bed and breakfast. There was lunch on the riverbank, and that's the wonderful thing about it. I mean, just being able to lunch on the riverbank, and then even at lunchtime I give them a wee dram, because at the paddle in the afternoon, so I'd be kind of careful with that. And then at the end of the day, they were getting the drams as well, and the transport, the shuttle transport. And again, I get transport providers, people like David Ross from Moneyfirth Tours, and Mark and his colleagues from Speyside Executive, and they're all the people that just again knew what I did and knew what I would need, and they were just great. But I would really go back to the Balvenie thing. Balvenie was my foot in the whiskey door, and I was really grateful to Balvenie, and then later on people like David Mayer and people like that from Balvenie who really supported me in terms of just, I used to have great tours at Balvenie. I still think Balvenie is one of the best distillery tours. The fact you see it all, at Balvenie, seeing the pile of barley, you see it in the steeps, you see it in the fore, and it's just I think it's brilliant. And I mean, I've probably introduced more people to whiskey with Balvenie 12-year-old than anything else.
It's still a massive seller for us in the shop and the bar as well. People ask, it's one of these kind of completely inoffensive, good drams, and if people are looking for a whiskey that maybe for a present for somebody and they don't know what they like, Balvenie is one of the first ones to say, well, you can't go wrong with it, because it's enjoyable.
I think even the people, the peat monsters, I think they still would concede that Balvenie is a good dram. Balvenie 12, I mean, it's their flagship. It's such a, I mean, David Stewart did a great job with that, and this idea of flipping it from the bourbon barrels to the sherry cask was genius, and it's just great. Anyway, I remember there's a chap called Walter Micklethwaite, who was also a great supporter. Oh, yeah. You know him, Walter?
Entry Gin.
Entry Gin, absolutely. Yeah. And he'd be another guy. It'd be good to get on your. He'd have a few stories for you.
Oh, but, yeah.
But he was very supportive of me, and I did a tasting, a Balvenie tasting one night. He's got a lovely big house, and he had, I think it was his guests and some friends he invited along, and it was the time I was really very involved with Balvenie, and I think Andrew gave me about 5 different Balvenies that time, and we had the double wood with Madeira cask at that time. We had the 21-year-old, and we had just a whole selection. And a lady had driven 3 guys there from Aviemore, I think it was, to this tasting. And she was sitting beside me, and I poured the drams of double wood for the starter, and was sort of explaining double wood and the history of how that went. And so I said to her, "Would you were here for a couple of hours, so do you want a wee dram?" I said, "No, you're driving." "Oh no, I don't like whiskey." So I said, "Well, just try this." And so guess what? I put the dram in her glass. The guys that drive had to get a taxi home, because she ended up taking part in the entire tasting, and that was it. And she loved them all. And this is a woman that came in saying, "Oh, I don't like whiskey." And so starting the Balvenie 12, and that's just how it is, that people, I think, and I think it's great now there are so many people, women in whiskey. I think, there's some really wonderful women in whiskey, but it's this thing that there still is this thing that, oh, whiskey's an old man's drink. And I think some women say, "I don't like whiskey," because they've just never tried it, or they've been given maybe the wrong whiskey. And I don't want to sort of be critical of the Islas, but I think if you're given that at the start, I think you need to, for my way, you need to gradually get into that. But I think if it's a start of whiskey, Balvenie 12 is just fantastic. But having said that, I'm also grateful to all my other providers. I have a little, I don't know if you can see it when you are, but I have a little selection of my main supporters here. And it's almost like I do it on the river, that I start. Well, it's Speyside Distillery, which, is now a lost distillery, sadly, at the moment anyway. But it starts up the river, and it's a Spey descent in whiskies. And obviously that's just, I haven't realised that actually a lot of my favourite whiskies are 15-year-olds, and most of them up there are like 15-year-olds. But
okay.
Yeah.
Looks good. Some classics. Balvenie has to be there, as you've mentioned a few times.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And it's interesting as well, because Andrew Forrest predicted that although I had a close relationship with Balvenie, he reckoned that one of the distilleries I would work very closely with, because again, they're a very handcrafted, family-run distillery, and that's Tamdhu. And he said it's a distillery, it's nearest the river. And I have to say, Sandy McIntyre he's one of my favourite whiskey people. And he's such a great guy. He's so enthusiastic about his business. I was very privileged again, because Sandy would occasionally, on his a day he was less busy, and if I had a group of real whiskey aficionados, and I would say to him, "Sandy, could you manage to end this 2:30?" He would give us a tour, and I just felt so privileged that he did that. And Sandy's tours are just absolutely fantastic. So, in fact, I actually had a breakfast in Edinburgh just the other week there with Ian Weir, one of the directors of Ian MacLeod Distiller. So, I feel I've got a very personal connection with people like that as well. So so Tamdhu's there. That's a Tamdhu 15. And Glenallachie, who were one of my later kind of acquisitions, let's say. And then Craigellachie, again, Matthew Corner. He's just been he's so supportive of my work. And I think the thing I didn't say before, it's also pivotal. I've used that word a lot in it, I can understand, but Matthew, it's when the whiskey distillers started to ask me to take their guests on the river. And Tamdhu, for example, they would have their American guests on the river, their distributors and customers and so on. And that's what really, I think, was the thing that almost was the catalyst for my getting to the position I was in. Because I did mention earlier that I'd had difficulties at the start. I won't say too much about it, but there was a while that I tried to trademark a company because my solicitor said to me, "You better trademark Spirit of the Spey." And then I got a letter through the post which said, it's a London company who were intellectual property solicitors, and they said, you have to change your name, not David Craig, Spirit of the Spey, and we're not allowing you to trade. And what I hadn't realised was I thought it was just called the Speyside Whisky Festival. I didn't know it was called the Spirit of Speyside Whisky Festival.
Yeah.
At that time, there were some of the directors who didn't like this young upstart, well, not too young, but this upstart coming in and calling himself Spirit of the Spey. And it was actually their company that had actually picked up on their radar that there was somebody coming in and having something very like Spirit of Speyside. But anyway, we it was a wee bit acrimonious for a while, but then we actually met up, discussed it, and then they realised that we were in fact doing the same thing, and it was quite likely our names were the same because we're both promoting Speyside, we're just both promoting Speyside whisky, and we just do it from different directions. And so we kissed and made up, not literally kissed, but we made up, and it was great. And so and then I became a member of the Whisky Festival, and it's great. And then I started going to the Whisky Festival dinner, which was a great way of meeting people and that sort of thing. And so it's been fantastic. But who'd be missing up here? Well, Glenfiddich, that was Jamie Milne, because he was good friends with Andrew Forrester. Then I got on him with Jamie Milne, and then Mark, he continued to help me out with stock. And then Glenn Grant's got an interesting one. Glenn Grant, there was two men came on the Whisky Festival day, and they were both from Glen Grant. And I thought, that's interesting that guys have come from Glen Grant. And so I chatted to them all day, and I said, Glen Grant's one of the Speysides that I haven't got any whiskey from, but maybe. And they said, you have to speak to somebody really high up in the company to do that. But we'll give you a name at the end of the day, sort of thing. So I was a bit suspicious of them. But anyway, at the end of the day, I said, right, okay, guys, who do I speak to? And then this guy said, well, actually, I'm Greg Stables. I'm the manager. So that's how I got in with Glen Grant, because Greg was actually on the trip, and we had a great laugh. He had a great sense of humour. So, and then he said, look, just drop by, and I'm very precious to my stock. I don't sort of throw it about. So that's sort of the 15-year-old I have left from Glen Grant. Then Speyburn. I just love Speyburn. I mean, it's like, for me, it's been such a long lost jewel in the crown of Speyside. I mean, really, it's such a lovely distillery. It's in that wee sort of narrow gore. I mean, Charles Doig did well in building that. It's just absolutely fantastic. And
it's beautiful. The drum maltons.
They're making great. Well, and the thing that's worrying me is that's their 15-year-old, and I hear that the powers that be are actually suggesting they change the recipe. And
I think they're changing the ABV as well. It's coming down to 40%.
And I mean, that if I was taking people to the distillery, which I took as often as I could, it's not the easiest distillery to get to from the river. But again, I had Speyside executive picking me up from the top of the beats at Rothes and Aquay Fishing. So I know the gilly pretty well there. Robbie, and so I was landing in his bank, and then we walk up towards the town, and then the Speyside executive would pick us up and drive us to Rothes, and that was just a great arrangement we had. Because once I actually found Speyburn, I thought I just must take people here, and the fact they've got the drum maltings, I mean, it's like somebody seemed to have lost the key in 1964 and then opened it up. It's like an Aladdin's cave, and you've got this wonderful. It's like you've got the old and the new, just stitched together. It's a brilliant distillery, and most people, I would say, were buying the 15-year-old. So when the staff there told me that they were going to change the recipe, I thought, oh no, that's just a disaster, because it's such a brilliant whiskey as it is. Who else have we got? Ben Romach, because Stephen. Well, I actually knew Stephen Rankin's mother when I was a teenager in Stonehaven. So that was kind of the connection with Stephen. So Stephen and I have always had a really good relationship as well. So privileged again.
He is such he's such a lovely man. I was speaking to him last weekend, because it's Russell who we're speaking about in the green room. Who it was Russell's 60th birthday, and I turned up at his party with a birthday card that said 50 on it. And when I saw him stood there with his name, his badge that said 60 and a big balloon, I was like, oh, I've got that wrong. But Stephen was there, and I just think it's a sign of a nice person. Yeah, I think like somebody's genuine when they remember who you are, because like Stephen must meet so many people constantly, but he always remembers who you are, and he'll like kind of work a room and make sure he goes and spends time with different people. And I just think it's just because that's not an easy thing to do, right? You know, if you know yourself, and like, you know, we meet a lot of people, and as much as you want to try and remember who they are and what they're called, it's not always easy. But he's just got such a natural affability about him, and like a natural gentleman, and just he could make conversation with anybody from royalty to you know, me.
He's a real people's person. I mean, given you know his position in the whiskey industry, I mean, he's a really kind of you know at the top of his game, and so influential. And I mean, Gordon MacPhail is such a brilliant company. I mean, I just love the Cairn Distillery now as well. That's a brilliant.
100%. Yeah, I mean,
just fantastic. And and so Stephen's a very.
Haven't been up yet. Need to go.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
So, I mean, he was obviously Red Door Gin. I was getting that from him, and then he was giving me the 10-year-old, and then I was actually at a function, it was an open day at Barriguish, the centre up the ski road, and it was actually for I think it was Aviemore half marathon, and there was some guys there I sat down to have lunch beside, and they asked what they were doing, and they said, "Oh, we're Stillman from Benromach." And I said, "Oh, right." I said, "Oh, well, I work a bit with Benromach." I explained what I did, and said, "Oh, Stephen gives me stock." And they said, "What's he been giving you?" And I said, "The 10-year-old." "Oh, no, what a cheapskate. No, you need to get the 15. That's the one you need to have." So what have I got now? I've got the 15 as well. So, yeah.
The 15 is such a good dram.
Yeah. And if you like curling, he loves you even more. So if you want to impress Stephen, tell him you've taken up curling. Yeah. No, he's a great guy. And his mother's lovely, by the way, Rosemary. She's a lovely one. So his dad's a nice guy as well. But yeah.
We've got loads of comments coming in. Cat one for you. Jeremy says it was better turning up with a 50-year-old card than a 70-year-old card, which I guess is
that's true. Yeah, I think I probably made Russell's day when I turned up with his card, 10 years minus his actual age.
Oh, he would have loved it.
Yeah,
I never got an invite to his birthday. Bugger.
Well, maybe you're just not as good looking.
Maybe not. Yeah, maybe that's what it was. Mark Watt, we were talking about I don't like whiskey to your last day up in Sriach. Mark Watt sees that as a challenge. Although he did lose once and had to run a 10K. So maybe, I don't know if it's still something he challenges. I guess the challenge is somebody says to him, "I don't like whiskey." And he finds a whiskey that they will like.
Yeah.
There's a hint there. Always start with the Balvenie 12. It's a good start.
Yeah. I've got more Pride and Joy sitting here as well. Actually, I don't know if you can see this, but this is one that I.
Oh yeah.
This is a ton 1401 batch one. Andrew used to advise me as to what I should buy, and I ended up usually buying two of some of them, drinking one and keeping the other. But this is one I've kept, which I think. Right. Well, it's just. I think it might be quite. I think it might be quite valuable now as well. But the ton 1401 was particularly special. You know. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we sometimes get whiskey with an intention of drinking it, and then over time it becomes, you can't afford to drink it anymore. Yeah. So Andy is asking, he's saying the Spey is such an iconic river. What I love about it, the Spey, and as you're describing your kind of trips down it, I guess every trip will be different due to just the nature of the river. You'll see different animals all the time, and the seasons changing. I think that would be such a beautiful, an autumn tour would be completely different to a spring tour in terms.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's going back. I used to, especially when it's camping, I try to shy away from autumn tours. October can be, as you know, quite raw, and also you probably are. I mean, you can get a spate at any time. And one of the worst spates ever was actually in June. And actually curtailed that trip because it really was stonking down. There was trees overtaking us on the river, big trees rolling around with these big boughs, and that was quite scary. Right. And I think I've cancelled maybe 2 trips in my whole career, and that was almost because it just got too high. The Spey is actually easier to paddle when it's higher because a lot of the rocks disappear. I actually call them hippos. They're not really rocks because you can be paddling along and there was nothing there when you went to that rapid, but suddenly it pops up and you're banging off a rock. That's what I call the splishy splashy bits. But no, it is, apart from anything else. I sometimes did 5-day trips, and that you'd start up maybe at Kincraig, and then the sort of almost the topography, the scenery of that sort of area is completely different. I mean, the river is obviously a wee bit narrower up there, and you're in very kind of agricultural grazing lands and so on. And okay, all the way down you've got animals grazing, but then when you get to and up there, it's quite sort of it's almost like the Young River up there, and it's quite splishy splashy. But then when you get down to Granton, that's when the grandeur almost starts coming into the Spey. I remember in my Spey guide that I wrote several years ago when I was a river advisor, because I was the advisor for the Scottish Canoe Association for 37 years. And in my guide, I actually said that the river starts to move seaward when you get to Granton. And there was one day, my good friend, I think Jerry Craig, not in relation, but Jerry and I were running a trip, and it was 10 ladies who, most of them had gone to school together, and it was also a girls' school, and they were just lovely girls. And all in their, I think maybe it's because one of them was 40 or something. But we were going down past, under the second, you may know there's 2 bridges in Granton. There's the one, the main road going off to River, and then lower down there's a lovely old bridge called the Old Spey Bridge, not built by General Wade, but one of his mates. And we just got under there and into the rapid below that. And one of the ladies said, "Oh my goodness, it's going downhill. Look at that, it's going downhill." And I said, "Well, it's actually, most of it's going downhill, but it just because it was a bit more splishy splashy, and it was that you could actually see it going downhill." But so that therefore it changes there. And then probably again, once you get past kind of Aberlour and Craigellachie, it's a really big, wide, grand river and sort of higher river banks and all the rest of it. And then when you get down towards Fauquebers, and after the things called the Red House, the terracotta cliffs with the pinnacles, and down towards Fauquebers, suddenly you've no more high ground and you're into raised beaches. And really the bit after Fauquebers is completely changed, and you're in a seaside environment, and it's all shingle. And for that reason, it changes all the time. And there's actually a big cliff down there on the right-hand side, which is, I say, kind of unusual a bit, but it is probably the last cliff that's river left. It's called the Quarry Pool, and it's it can be quite a dangerous little bit there because the shingle keeps moving around and you never quite know where you're going. And obviously all these trees I mentioned earlier on, they ended up, it's almost like an elephant graveyard. All these big trees end up down in that part of the river, and you can go round a corner and suddenly there's a tree that was not there last week just because it's just been a spate, and it's moved the shingle and it's moved the trees. So, and of course now the really sad thing is that we've lost part of the Garmouth Viaduct, and I'm not surprised that's happened, because you may be aware there was a lovely house, an Edwardian house to the left of the Garmouth Viaduct, and when I started paddling this Spey, you couldn't even see that house. It was about 500 metres from that house, and over the piece she's just eaten into the bank, and they had to demolish the house because they're about to fall into the river. And I'm thinking this must be affecting the bridge, because it's coming round from the left and hitting that upright. And I'm not an engineer or anything, but I started to think this can't be good for the bridge, because it's been hit by a different angle. And sure enough, that was the upright that gave way and it fell in, which is just a complete disaster because it was such an iconic bridge.
Absolutely, yes. We were just up there about 2 days before it collapsed. Actually, I had a tour up in Speyside, and we're sitting watching. And we stopped. There was a wee car park. We went down, and the guys had a dram, just kind of watching the river go by. It was such a nice, kind of moment. And
every day's different. I mean, and people say to me, "You never get fed up paddling the Spey?" And you just can't. Or they say, "Which river do we do next?" And I'm saying, "Are there other rivers?" I mean, really, I'm my home river when I was a kid was the Dee, and I liked it well enough, and I still love the Dee. And there's a Tay, but the thing about the Spey is, I mean, there's actually some rapids on the Tay that can be really dangerous. I'm not saying, okay, you can drown in any river, but the Spey is a much more forgiving river in so many ways, especially if you're guided, because but there's, Campsie Lynn, for example, in the Tay is quite a dangerous area, and even Stanley Weir is quite a difficult place. But the Spey is a very forgiving, a very beautiful. And then I don't know if you ever saw it, but there was a program on Channel 4. They phoned me up and they said, we've just finished doing the world's most scenic railway journeys. We're now doing the world's most scenic river journeys, and we can't find a river in Britain that's scenic and that has got boats on it. And I said, well, we don't have motorised boats on this river, but you have come to the most beautiful river. I know I've got a bias, but you've got the most scenic river in Britain. And even when the cameraman arrived, he was a bit sceptical. But once I got him into the canoe, he was just besotted, and he said, this is going to make great TV. And they were going to put on the Spey first, because they'd done the Po and the Niagara and the Seine, and they'd all these sort of big foreign rivers. And they thought, the teeny Spey will not be good enough, so we'll put it on first. However, they completely reprogrammed it. And when the producer phoned me to ask me for some pronunciations, because it was, I don't know if you know that series, but it was Bill Nighy that did the voiceover. And I said, now listen, when Bill uses the word loch, get him to say loch. And of course, what did he say? Oh, loch morning, loch inch. But anyway, and she said, oh yes, there's somewhere called Craigellachie. And I said, no, not Craigellachie, it's Craigellachie. So that was good. But she said then that they were going to put on first, but they were so pleased with the way it had worked out, they actually kept that to last. So they kept the best to last. And for me, that brought me probably, I mean, I'd done Landward, I'd done Countryfile, I'd been on the river with Paul Merton and things. But that Channel 4 program, which was just brilliant. I mean, the cameraman was the editor as well, and he did a beautiful job. And a guy from Aviemore, a guy called Kirk Watson, he did the droning. And I mean, even when I do see the program, because sometimes they repeat it on a Friday night, it's off catch-up television now, but you can still see it on a Friday night sometimes. So if you get the opportunity, the program is called The World's Most Scenic River Journeys, and obviously it was a Spey, and it was a fantastic. And I even got people come from Australia, because I went on to YouTube, and you can still get anything on YouTube. It's an edited version, but and that really showed the Spey in the best possible way. Yeah.
Look out for it. It's pretty iconic, and it's such a long expanse of water, and you can just imagine it changing, around every single bend. But I was just thinking about what you were saying about, like the bridge and the house, and just how serene water can be, but how destructive it can be at times as well. Like, it just takes the sort of, as you said, you can run a bend and finding a whole pile of trees uprooted, and
but I mean,
have ever been any examples of just you kind of get
that happens, but it's not something I would, I think, again, if people, I mean, I'm not saying everyone should be guided. There's people who are proficient enough to do the Spey, and if you're proficient to paddle, you paddle the Spey, and that's a good thing about it. But you just need to be aware that it is a river, and it does change a lot, and that's especially the bit beyond Fochabers. I mean, there was it 2 years ago, where actually a lot of us were just stopping at Fochabers because there was just so much debris in the river, and it just needed a spade to clear it. And then once it's cleared, it's fine. But you just need to be. I think it's this word respect. We just need to respect it. It's like dealing with the fishermen. The fishermen, when I started in the Spey, a lot of them did not like us. And there's a very Victorian culture in the fishing, I think, because Queen Victoria and her prince started bringing people. Well, they came to Balmoral, and then I think the Toffs in London thought they should do the same thing. And there's still a wee bit of that culture in it, that I think, especially because a lot of the people come from south of the border, and they've got different access rules. And it's we always say to the folk, this is how we deal with fishermen. We shout to them, whistle to them, and so on. And we're very respectful of them. And I've just tried to get across to all the users that we should just adapt it, what I call the 3 R's, to being not reading, writing, and arithmetic, but rather respect, reasonability, and responsibility. And I think if we all stick to that, then it works out really well. And I mean, it ends up, a lot of the gillies are very good friends of mine now. We exchange Christmas cards. In fact, I was really sad that about 6 weeks, maybe 2 months ago now, one of my favourite gillies, who retired a few years ago, a guy called Sandy Smith, who was in Nakando, he always knew I had a whiskey, and I've got like a photo case that's got 8 nosing glasses, and it takes a bottle of Balvenie perfectly, but it takes most bottles as well. But Sandy knew I had that, and if he had a client that maybe had recognised me from previous years, then he would say, "Come on over, Dave." So I'd go over, and there was one particular day where there was a lovely guy called Chris, who was Sandy's client, Sandy's guest, that I knew, and he actually was one that said, "Oh, hello, Dave, how are you?" And so we went across, and I just 2 clients that day. It was a chap who, they were actually both Paul's my clients, and they came ashore, and I got my whiskey case out, and Chris, the fisherman, said to one of the Pauls, "I don't really drink whiskey," and my client said, "Well, neither do I." And then the fisherman said to my client, "So what's your sort of drink of choice?" Oh, he said, "I like a red wine." So the fisherman disappeared into the hut and came out with this apparently hugely expensive bottle of red wine. And they shared a glass of red wine, and I shared with Sandy and my other client a nice whiskey on the bank. And that's what it's all about. It's just this thing about, getting together and having a harmony. And that's what I strove to do in my years of being the river advisor. And we did. We got there. It's a much friendlier river now. It's a greater understanding now. Yeah. So, yeah.
I was involved in the opening of the River Dawn for the salmon fishing season a couple of weeks ago, maybe that was last month sometime. And I was so I didn't know what to expect. I kind of knew roughly what was going to happen. They were going to bless the river with a quaich or whiskey, or a whiskey, obviously. But there's a lot of speeches, and it was all about respecting the ecology and the ecosystem and the biodiversity of the river. And it was just so nice to see. Like, there was just a group of kind of younger, the young generation and an old generation. The minister was there, and the whole thing was just. We were really lucky as well because it was just after that flooding. So like up to halfway through the week, like literally the river had been where the benches were, where we're meant to be doing our sausage rolls and our drams. But the heavens kind of parted and the sun came out. And it was just one of the loveliest things I've ever been part of. And it just felt so like it's such an old ceremony. But I mean, I don't know where else you would see something like that. This kind of respect for nature and like sort of observing this kind of older way of life. Like, I wrote down your quote, you fell in love with the Lady of the Spey, and it's almost like that sort of traditional kind of pagan style of like Scotland, where we still kind of hark back to those like old kind of beliefs and things. And I just thought, what a nice meeting of two worlds. I really enjoyed it.
I think there is becoming a nice balance. One of the things that's disappointed me over the years is that the amount of banks on the Spey that are actually strimmed. They've cut the trees down to make fishing easier, and that's kind of led to some erosion. Because obviously if you take the trees away, then it kind of affects the integrity of the bank. But there is now efforts to replant some of the banks with trees, and also one girl in particular, an Icelandic guy, a really nice guy, she's on, what's his beat? Just at Arndilly, and he's actually been planting wildflowers along some of his banks, which is just great. So it's given deference to the pollinators, which we really need to do. But yeah, I mean, I think part of the fishing thing, it's so nice, is a tradition as well of the openings. And then, so were you pouring Glengarry into the Dawn, were you?
Yes, yeah. I mean, I didn't get to pour the whiskey. I presented the whiskey to the guy that won the first catch of last year. So I did the prize giving, and then the local minister, she blessed the river and poured the whiskey into it out of the quaich, which was lovely to see. Really nice.
Yeah.
Well, Rick was asking, how much did you pour in? Was it a full bottle or just a wee tube?
So yeah, talking about things, whiskey.
I think
just a wee tube. We don't want to upset the fish too much. We don't want.
Well, I think I keep meaning to go to an opening day in the Spey. I feel that it's a bit remiss I've never done it, but it's just never worked out for me. But I think it's because it happens in the Penny Bridge at Aberlour. Then I think they do pour in traditionally a kind of a whole bottle of Aberlour. I keep thinking maybe I shouldn't go to the event. Maybe I should just have my canoe under the bridge for when we start. Pouring, yeah. No, but I mean, it is. it's a very friendly river now, and yeah, and talking of friendly, that sort of thing now. Find, I was mentioning about my kind of difficulties at the start of getting my foot in the door and convincing people that I was worth talking to about whiskey. But the whiskey industry, although you're all competing, it's amazed me how friendly the industry is. I mean, I think it's one of the brilliant things about the industry that whichever distillery you're representing, then it really comes out of the whiskey festival, and you go to the dinner and everyone's together there, and even the AGMs of the whiskey festival. It's just everyone's just really friendly and so on. And I've again privileged to feel part of that, because when I'd walk in initially, maybe at the whiskey festival dinner, and they'd be saying, "Who are you?" and then eventually it's, "Oh, hello, Dave, how are you?" And so it's a lot. I think if I was 40 years younger, I'd be very torn as to whether I wanted to follow the path I've been on, or the water path I've been on for all these years. Or I think being a whiskey ambassador is a great job. I mean, I think it'd be a really good career. Yeah.
Well, one of our favorite whiskey ambassadors, Paul McKendrick, is on, and he's agreeing with you on the two of your influencers, Jamie Milne and Andrew Forrester. He says two of the most influential people in his early days of his whiskey career. So nice to hear them mentioned again.
Yeah, we did I did a thing for the national park. They hosted a thing called the World Adventure Travel Summit. It was in 2010, and I took part in that, and I just did a trip from Linhat, just beside Kingussie, all the way down to Walter's Place, and we actually set up a whiskey tasting at Walter's. He had a yurt, and it was brilliant, because we just paddled. We'd given lunch above Loch Inch, and we paddled on down. I phoned Andrew, because he was doing the whiskey tasting for me, and I phoned us, like, we'll be there in about 45 minutes. And Walter had actually organised for a piper to start. It was a September day, and there was this beautiful big birch tree. It was blowing in the wind like a big golden fountain. It was just amazing. And this piper was under there, and I was actually crying. It was just so emotional. And then the piper then walked us, and then Walter actually had a yurt, and it had a perspex roof, or at least a perspex skylight. And Andrew, there was 12 in my group, and Andrew had brought 7 Balvenis. Pretty sure it was 7. And he'd laid them on a table, and the sun was shining through this perspex roof onto the whiskey, and it was like a table of gold. It was just absolutely fantastic. It was unbelievable. And there was this American guy who writes articles, Don Mankin's his name, and big American, big droopy moustache. And at one stage, I nipped up to the house to change, got my kilt, and come back. And the dinner, or the meeting before the dinner back in Aviemore for this 500 people to meet, was 5 o'clock, and it was after 4 o'clock. So I went back down and said to them, "Right, guys, the minibus is here. We've got to leave the next half hour to get you back for this meeting at 5. And Don Mankin said, well, he said, "It strikes me," he said, "I don't know about you guys," he said, "we haven't finished all this man's whiskey yet." He said, "I don't know about you," he said, "but I'm not going to any effing boring meeting." He said, "I'm going to stay with Andrew here and drink the rest of his whiskey." And so everyone agreed. And then when eventually I had to drive them back in my car to get back. And 7 o'clock we got back, and they actually went to the dinner still dressed in their canoe kit. It was just an amazing thing. But Andrew said to me that day, Don Mankin said to me that day, he said, "I hope Balvenie know what they've got in that man." He said, "His pour, not because he drinks it, but his pores exude Balvenie." He said, "I've never come across anyone who's so much their brand." And I mean, that was just amazing. And I told him that I was very flattered, but that was me, just Andrew. Andrew's quite a serious guy, but really when it came to promoting his brands, he was very, very good. Yeah.
Super.
Just on the comments, I think you mentioned Aaron Daly and Mark Watt, another fantastic ambassador for the whiskey industry, was saying that his dad used to work at Aaron Daly, and as it was tied up with the farm at Macallan. So I think they've obviously got a family history.
I think Mark was born in Macallan Estate.
Was he? That's cool.
Right.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have got connections with Speyside somewhere or other along the way. Quite a lot of fishing chat coming in there as well. But yeah, it's amazing what you can find alongside the River Spey. I was just thinking, talking about your canoes and the guys all kind of dressed up in their wet clothes. I used to, when I lived on the West Coast, I used to work for a farm and shooting estate. And I used to work for I used to do different cleaning jobs around about the island. And the local builder set up little kind of holiday accommodations for canoers because they never really wanted anything other than a bed and a hot shower in the morning, and then they'd be straight back on the water because it was, I don't know if you've sailed much on the West Coast, but we lived on the Sound of Cooing, so it was a really dangerous bit of water, quite fast, but there was a lot of sailors and canoeists and stuff. But he converted old lifeboats into these little wee kind of holiday lets for canoers. I absolutely loved it, but I also hated it as well because everything was wet constantly. You find wet footprints everywhere, wet clothes. It just smelled wet constantly.
So was that on the sea then? With the sea kayaking?
Yeah, kayaking. Sorry, but yeah, it was all sea sport. But bloody fast water, brave people. But I think that sometimes maybe is the best way of seeing somewhere like an island, for example, like seeing it from the other side, from the coast, and kind of looking, because a lot of that you can't access, by walking or by vehicle. So I'd imagine you're seeing, maybe even on the Spey there, Dave, you're maybe seeing some stuff that you'd never get to see otherwise if you're on foot.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the aspect you get of Speyside, it's completely different when you're on the river. I mean, you can go down the road and all the rest of it, or you can even walk in the Speyside Way, which is nice enough, although that's one of my kind of soapbox things. I'm very disappointed about how the Speyside Way doesn't actually follow the Spey, and I've actually done straw polls with walkers saying, how are you enjoying the walk? Oh, we did the West Highland Way last year, and it was much better. And I'm saying, no, it can't be, because walking in the Spey, but it is a fact that I think a lot of the states were not very amenable to the Speyside Way coming too close to the river. And when you look at the route, it actually moves away from the river, and people say, you can't even see the river. And that does kind of upset me a bit. And there are still parts of the old railway that it could go on to, and I've kind of lobbied the national park at various times to maybe even make some of the old railway line a core path, which is still possible. But I mean, the Speyside Way is nice enough, but I think it could be nicer. But to do it on the river, you get a completely different aspect. I mean, you're quite low down, and you mentioned animals before. We don't see a lot of animals, but we often see deer, for example, drinking at the side of the river. Obviously, there's now, especially higher up on the river, there's the beavers, which are hugely interesting and fascinating.
Have you seen them?
I have to confess, I haven't actually seen a beaver moving yet, but I do work in the national park on that. There's a little chap called Jonathan Willett, who is the beaver officer for the park, and he's realised, and keep with what we're saying, Jonathan realised that the best way to see the river and to do the beaver monitoring is by canoe. So again, I'm very privileged that he's actually asked me to help him with that. And so every year we do probably up to 6 days where we paddle different parts of the river and see what the beavers are doing. And there's a lot of sort of panic, or there was. I think it's lessened because the people realise that they do munch trees. They love willows, but willows coppice very quickly. So, there are bits of the river where they'll actually fell a whole lot of willows at one stage, and then it's actually happened down here at Newton Moor. My farmer friend next door, my crofter friend next door, he was saying, they better not come and eat my trees. However, the first time we came down, one of the biggest bits that had been felled were on Roberts Island, but now it's you can't see if you're at the far side of the island, you can't see the kind of mainland again because they've all grown up with greater strength, so that's the thing. So they kind of do munch away, and then they move a little bit, and they're very territorial. So this thing about soon be hundreds of them, but there won't be because they'll just move to somewhere else and up the tributaries and that sort of thing. And then once they start doing that, they'll actually, munch the trees, and then the trees will grow up again, and then they'll actually start maybe building dams and so on. It'll hold the river back, and that's the difficulty, that a lot of the streams have been canalised in previous years. Particularly again in Victorian times, and there's now an effort to try and make some of them actually start meandering again, so that the water doesn't come gushing down, because that's not good for the salmon either, because a river that's been straightened, then it comes straight down and flushes out the eggs of the salmon. And now they're actually putting in, some rivers are putting in old worthless things like Norway spruces with the roots in the river, so that they can actually divert the river back to where it might have gone in previous times. And okay, there is an element of flooding of fields will happen with that, but overall it's seen as being a very good thing for the environment. And I know that not everyone will agree with that, but certainly I think that's how it goes. And this is not a short-term plan. This is like a 200-year plan, really. It's how it will be in 200 years. And I think people have just got to kind of realise that it is, you know, about saving the planet and all the rest of it. The beavers are great. So no, I haven't seen one, but I've seen evidence of them, and I think they're fantastic. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. I've seen nearly every type of wildlife in Scotland. I've been very lucky because I've lived all around Scotland. But I've never seen a beaver. Beaver. So
no,
that's
we see deer down drinking the river sometimes. I mean, I've actually seen deer crossing the river in bits, which is quite fantastic. And then we see a lot of birds. Like people are obviously thrilled to see ospreys. I mean, there's more and more ospreys appealing on the river now, buzzards, and then you've got all the sort of the other riverside birds like oyster catchers and. I mean, I just love the grey wagtails, the way they flit along in front of you. And oyster catchers are a bit noisy at times, but it is great. It's just great.
Jeremy was asking further up here, a wee question. Oh, my mouse still doesn't scroll up. What was Jeremy's question?
Jeremy was asking, do you have any particular days which are a special memory from over the years?
Sorry, do I?
Any special days or any special memories from over the years?
Oh my goodness me! Gosh. Well, I think there was one particular week I did with 6 gentlemen who were all 50, and there was one chap who was older, but they had actually one guy had worked with me before, and he'd almost like suggested to his friends' wives that a spade descent would be a good way or a nice present to give them. So we did a 4-day descent, and that was in June, and it was just one of the best descents ever because it was the sun was splitting the rocks. It was sunny every day. There were a lovely bunch of guys. The river level was just that wee bit up, and it was just pretty perfect. Just the group were lovely. The weather was lovely. Lady Spey was flowing well, and that was probably my favourite trips. Although I confess, probably one of my I'm allowed to say one of my best days in the river was actually a day for television. I had the pleasure of doing a day in the river. That there'll be a few people, if they know me, are smiling at this now, because I did a day with Amy Irons for the adventure show on the river, and we just had a great time together. She's such a down to earth, lovely woman, and it was just the camera crew were brilliant, and we just had a great day paddling different sections of the river for the adventure show, and that was really good. Yeah. But no, I mean, it's hard to pick. I mean, I love the festival days because, I used to do 3 days for the festival, and I used to get maybe 10 or 12 people for each one. And then as the years passed, I think maybe a lot of the regulars weren't doing it. So now I just do 1 day. And in fact, I am going to do 1 day this year, although I've stepped back. And there is a lovely girl called Emmy, who's not going to take on Spirit of the Spey per se, but I think she will probably take on part of the role I've had. And I'm very glad about that because Emmy's really good. She knows the river very well already. I actually said to her, she's like me 40 years ago. She's enthusiastic about the Spey. She knows it well. She's a great coach. And so I wish her well. But I've said to her, look, I think you should get involved in the festival. So I've agreed to back her up this year. So she's going to run the river section, and I'm going to be there, and I'll be the gopher, and I'll serve the buffet lunch at Carron Bridge. And then because I've still got some stock left from my providers, then I'll do the whiskey tasting at the end. So yeah. So if you want to come along for a nice dram, I'm still good at it.
I know I was going to ask you about it. Because when you mentioned you were doing the last one, because you put together that beautiful. If you don't follow Dave's socials, your Spirit of Spey on Instagram, but you put together that beautiful kind of, because I followed you for ages on Instagram, but like you put together that really poignant kind of, this is the end wee video of like you sort of retiring, hanging up your oars. And I thought, oh, I need to get him on the Blether. And then of course you said that you're going to do your last kind of soiree, your last kind of Spirit Spey sort of. I'll have to pop over and meet you in person and share a dram before you hang up your oars.
I mean, I'm thinking it. I love the festival days so much that, you know, I could still paddle. I still will paddle. I'll still go on the river whenever I can. But I want to get back to doing some sea kayaking. I want to see my grandchildren more, because I have some of the most beautiful grandchildren in the world. But you know, so is everybody else apparently. But mine are particularly special. But I want to see them more, and I want to travel more. I've got a Volkswagen van, and I want to go and travel around Scotland. There's bits of Scotland I haven't seen yet. But do a lot of sea kayaking, hopefully, and that sort of thing. But so it is hard. But you know, the thing I thought is maybe I could, if my whiskey trading partners would still support me a little bit with a little stock, then I might actually still do the whiskey festival tasting for Emmy if she's still going to do it. So I mean, my providers know that I've never needed
you've got
much.
An offer here.
What's that?
Sorry, Mark Watt's offering you some stock. He said he could send you a bottle. So let me get a few more offers in.
Thank you, Mark. I met Mark before then, because I don't remember meeting Mark. Mark, is it Mark Watt?
Well,
Yes.
Yeah, so Mark said that he spent 4 days canoeing down the Spey. So I'm just wondering if he was part of your group or not. Mark, let us know if it was part of Dave's.
Right. Well, I mean, 4 days is a regular trip. The most popular trip is a 3-day from Granton to Cragganmore to Craigellachie to sea. That was the other one. A 4-day often goes from Aviemore. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah.
Mark might just lost a day.
You and I did meet before. Well, we didn't actually meet. You kind of avoided me. I was also trying to get in with. Is it Katrina that's at Benriach? No, it's not. No, because you're Katrina, aren't you? The lady at that's terrible. I remember her names. Anyway, not Dr. Rachel. I mean, I've never met Dr. Rachel either yet, but that was something I missed. I kept trying to get in with Benriach because I think they do good whiskey as well. So Benriach I never carried, but the ambassador was at the same day with Mitch Bishop.
Charlotte.
I knew began with K. Yeah, I knew began with K. Yeah. So I did speak to Charlotte that day. And we were going to meet up, and she was going to.
I'm so sorry about that.
I mean, no. But, I was talking to her, and then suddenly you just disappeared into the ether, and so I didn't have a chance to talk to you, but which I'm very sorry about. But
I know.
I just thought it was great that a distillery had a cat, which I'm sure they got lots of mice and stuff. So. But I thought that was really good. But I enjoyed listening to you that day in Aberdeen with Mr. Bishard and the lovely Fraser.
Oh, I know. Yeah. I'm so sorry we didn't actually get to chat, but I think that was the first year I'd done it, and I was so overwhelmed. I just thought I am such a fraud. Like, I can't believe I've been asked to come and speak at this thing. I was meeting all these amazing people. I was totally starstruck, and So but it's such a fantastic. You
came across pretty well to me. That's why I've been glad to talk to you, because I thought you're pretty good actually. But my disappointment would have been, it's a bit like a lot of Rachel Barry's got some brilliant sort of whiskies in her. I mean, things like Glendronach and what's the other one? The Seaside. Glenglassaugh. Yeah, I mean, they're just brilliant whiskies as well. But Benriach could have been nice to have, because I've definitely tried to just keep Speysides. And the thing is that Andrew kind of predicted it as well, that, with all respect to big guys like the Diageos and the Chivas and so on, they didn't really want to get to know me, whereas it's really nice. It's nice for me because it's all the family kind of run things, like Ben Romach's family. Then, as Andrew predicted, Tamduza family, even although they're pretty big, Glenfiddich and Balvenie are pretty family run, and so I've really ended up mainly as the family kind of run ones. I mean, and also what am I forgetting here? Glenallachie. I mean, what a lovely man Billy Walker is. I was lucky enough that I sat opposite him at the Whisky Festival dinner last year, and that was just such a privilege. And he's such a modest man. It was just so. There are so many lovely people, and the other person I really would like to thank is Angela from the Whisky Festival. She is just she's been so helpful to me throughout, and it's quite funny because she's helped me with a whole so often that when I write to her now, I say Angel, and I put the last A in a bracket because to me she's an angel. So thanks, Angel, for all your help in all these years as well. Yeah, in fact, she's actually now. I shouldn't maybe be saying this, but she's going to keep me a seat at the dinner this year. And she said it could be your retirement party. She said that. So that'd be fantastic because it means I can say a sort of a fond farewell to a lot of the people I wouldn't see otherwise. So yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, you really have kind of like met like the sort of some of the best people in the whiskey industry. Like you're talking about our entry video. I mean, you've pretty much met most of the people that were in our video.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I said to you before, we sort of started this. I mean, again, I used to go to the London Whisky Show with Andrew as his helper for Balvenie, and I met Secundra at that time, and just that's where I met people like Dave Worthington and just a whole lot of that sort of real whiskey kind of legends now there. But just being in Speyside, I mean, we've got so many wonderful distilleries and so many wonderful people working in them as well. And so so again, privileged to meet them all and work with them. And I said at the start, I thank them all for the support I've had over the years. Yeah.
Super. Yeah. I'm just going to jump in and say cheerio to Rick Johnston from the Whisky Zone. He's having to go, but he's over in Scotland next week for their Leith Festival. So we will see you there, Rick. Slangy, good night or good day, seeing as there's no 1 o'clock.
Thanks to anyone that has come in tonight to listen to this old guy talking about something that's not completely whiskey orientated.
It's been fascinating, absolutely. Yeah, it's been good.
Really has. Even the Blether's always trying to meet.
I hope there's still somebody awake.
Yeah, they've got one person there still on the go. Well, Jeremy's asked you another cool question. He's asking, could you do sea kayaking at Glenglassaugh?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, when I was a kid, one of the things we used to do with this community worker who started kayaking, we used to come up to Sanand and in our homemade KW7s with no buoyancy at that time. We made the canoes, made the kayaks, and came up and we surfed at. I mean, the Moray Coast is great for sea kayaking, especially places like. I did a trip with some friends just a couple of years ago. We just went. Where did we go from? Gosh, that's terrible. I think we go at Lossy? It was one of the harbor. We went from one harbour to another harbour, just along, and there's some lovely cliffs and caves and things that we passed as well. That's terrible. I can't remember. Was Hopeman one of them? I think Hopeman was one of them. Yeah. So along that coast there's some really good sea kayaking. Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. And obviously you've got to be aware of tides and things, but I mean I think it's a fairly. I think most of the time it's a benign kind of tide there. But yeah.
Right. I remember we took a group to, I don't think it was the one Jeremy was on. We had a Whisky Academy, which is a week-long kind of Whisky Geeks course. Rick, who's just left, was on before as well. And we went to Glenglassaugh.
Right.
And we didn't have a tour, but the idea was that the guys were going to walk through the distillery. Russell, who worked with us at the time, was going to take the guys through the distillery and then down onto the beach. And me and Tony were on the beach with the Glenglassaugh with some fish. And we're going to come down and we're going to have a dram at Glenglassaugh, eat some fish and just kind of absorb, because that's one thing that people love about Glenglassaugh is the scenery and that kind of sense of place. Yeah. So about half an hour later, there's no sign of the guys coming through the distillery. So I text Russell and I was like, what's taking so long? It's bloody cold down here on the beach. And he's like, oh, really sorry. we met one of the warehouse guys, so we're now in the warehouse taking a dram out of the casks. You bugger!
Right. Yeah.
No way! I'm sitting here freezing my butt off on the beach, and you're in a warehouse drinking out of the cask.
Well, nowhere better to be than a warehouse. I mean, the smells in some of the warehouses are just absolutely fantastic. It must be one of the best smells in the world. That, yeah.
I never got bored of it. I think as soon as I open the warehouse and I get bored of that smell, I shouldn't be doing the job anymore, because I could go in there every day and still love it just as much as the first day I did it.
Yeah,
so nice.
It's great. Yeah, and again, I think for me, again, I'd hate to go on a bit, but Speyburn, I think especially their warehouse it's the sweetest smelling one. I think, really. Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
And one of my favorite tours I did was Speyburn, and it was one of those things. It's just a meeting of lots of things, because I loved as you said, it's like kind of the old and the new kind of interwoven into each other. It's like stepping back in time. You see the soldiers scratching their names into the posts up in the maltings, and but it was not long after it just started opening to the public. So I think they did it the first day in Spirit Speyside, didn't they? And then I was in touch with that's terrible, I've forgotten his name. I'm so sorry if you are watching. He's not going to be, but it's somebody I know who works for Edinburgh House, and he said, have you ever been to Speyburn? I said no. So he organised the trip for me. So it was just me and two colleagues.
Matthew.
No, it wasn't Matthew, but I met Matthew there actually for the first time. But Paul, me and you were speaking about this guy the other night. If you're still watching, put it in the chat. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It does matter. But anyway, I'm not going to remember. But it was snowing, and it's quite a windy kind of out of the road track, as you said. It's not the easiest to get to. But it must have been near Christmas time, because it had the Christmas tree up in the beautiful kind of tasting room. And I think they had a fire. Did they have a fireplace in there? I think they had a fire on, if I remember.
Yes, they do. They have a fire underneath that lovely big salmon they've got on the faraway wall. Yeah. I mean, that's a lovely tasting room as well. Yeah.
Oh, so beautiful. And I don't usually like a sherry forward whiskey, but I mean, I love the 10-year-old. It's so fruity. It's so yum. And then they brought out I've got it here actually, the 18-year-old. And they did it with a little Christmas mince pie. Right. And it was just that moment of like the whiskey and the mince pie together worked really well. And we'd had the best tour. The staff were so lovely and so proud of the place. We were the only people there that day. You had the Christmas tree. It was snowing outside. It's like, right, stick a pin in me. I'm done. This is definitely core whiskey memory being created right there. Yeah. And ever since then, I've just loved that distillery, because it was just more than just a tour. It was everything. It was a full sensory experience, and it just kind of stuck with me as one of my favorite whiskey moments. And not because we were dipping out of casks, or because we met the head distiller, or because it was all bells and whistles. It was just good people, good whiskey, good place, and you can't beat that sort of experience. It's hard to get.
There's a modesty there as well. I mean, they're so good at what they do, but there's a modesty, and they're just lovely people. Yeah,
they are. Yeah, really impressed with the place. Really, really nice. But we're spoiled for choice, are we not? And you'll know that yourself, bobbing in and out of all these wee distilleries. Everyone's got its own uniqueness, its own charm. We're very, very lucky.
Yeah. I mean, the only limitation I had was that I could only go to the ones that were fairly accessible, to walk to, for example. So, but that's why when I was staying at Cragganmore House, it was great, because you could just go out the Cragganmore, because it was built by John Smith, as I said earlier, the distiller, and you just walked out the back door and you're at a distillery at Cragganmore. And then in some days, if I couldn't get Cragganmore, then we just go down to the Candle next day and so we just walk up to Cardew, and so that was really good. And Aberlour was good as well, until they started the big building program and I couldn't get to Aberlour. But if people were really keen, then obviously I would actually get them people carried to Bilvenny and that sort of thing, because they were people just loved Bilvenny, and but it worked out well for Speyburn as well. So I was limited to how many you could actually visit at a time. And sometimes I say to folk, look, we can do a couple of distilleries, but then you can do distilleries yourself, and then I could recommend where you could go and this sort of thing. But
okay,
but there's so many. I mean, we've got 50 to choose from. Not that they've all got visitor centres, but the ones. I mean, Glenfarclas as well. That's a great distillery.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of my favourites. The ship's
Yeah.
room is a great tasting room. Another great tasting room that you can just
Yeah.
get lost in. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have Sugar Kitty is asking, if you had a favourite fishing spot, would you disclose it or keep it to yourself?
A fishing spot.
Yeah.
Well, I have fished, because what I used to do was, it's not something I do a lot of. I'm not really a fisherman per se, but during the time, especially my early days of paddling the Spey, and relationships weren't too good, what I started doing as advisor was I would invite owners and managers and gillies to come on the river with us on a Sunday, usually towards the end of the season or even after the season had finished. And we would actually invite them to come on the river. And there was one Sunday we had 13 boats, and I got people to bring boats, right? You could use my boats or bring boats, and then they would helm. And so you'd have a gilly or a factor or something in the front of your boat. And it meant that they could see the limitations of the canoes, they could see how we did it, and then we could talk about what they wanted. And in Nakando were really good, because we used to paddle from Barnadalach to Nakando, which is a regular paddling section, because it's got some of the best white water in the Spey. And then when we got to Nakando were very gracious, because they would actually put on, the coffee pot, and we'd have tea and cake and whatever else in one of the bothies at Nakando, and then we could chew the cud further there. And it was really, really good for building. Well, I actually wrote articles for the Scottish Canoe Association magazine, and I called them Building Bridges, because that's what we did. And from that, it just meant that the fishermen and were just meeting each other face to face, and we could see, and we could make the point that we're all privileged to actually be users of this wonderful river, and so it did build relationships. And that was really good for relationships, and so it's just really good, and so the river now, I think, is a much friendlier place than it was, because we do tend to all get on and have an understanding for what we do. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I guess it's just
favorite thought. There you go.
I'm just going to say that it's all that kind of just coming together, that community all kind of striving for the same thing, isn't it? And if you get people on your tours who have that respect, you just feel they all gel together. And I can imagine it just being absolutely wonderful memories being made.
Yeah, that reminds me of one day we're going down on I think it was a Saturday, and we got to Braywater Estate, down beside the Red Hooks again, and there's a hut that's elevated on the river left, and there was a big party going on. They had parasols up. You can almost hear the champagne corks popping as we approached, and you could smell the barbecue. So the hilarity was amazing. So I drew into the eddy just below the hut and set up and said, "Excuse me, I've got a booking for," and it was 1:25. And I said, "We've got a booking for Craig at 1:30. And this chap looked and he said, "Oh, Mr. Craig," he said, "I'm very sorry." He said, "We can't manage to accommodate you today. Could you come back next week?" And I said, "I certainly will," sort of thing. So the banter was great. So that night, the chap I spoke to, his name was Jamie, and he actually was living in Orton Estate, because there was some sort of thing between Orton and Braywater where there was some sort of card game way back in Victorian times. And the guy that owned, or the gentleman that owned Braywater at that time, the Braywater Fishings, he kept losing in the card game, and Orton was really, a lot of money above him. So in a frustrated moment, the chap from Braywater said, "I'll tell you what, if we'll call it what they call double or quits the next time." He said, "But what I'll do is, if I lose the next time, then I'll give you 99 years fishing on Braywater." He lost. So this chap, Jamie's family, benefited from that, because they used to rent accommodations in Orton, and then they could fish on Braywater. And so he then phoned me and the next day and said, "Look, we're here for, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks." And he said, "So would you consider taking us on the river next Sunday?" So that was a real coup. And that was the first time ever I had a fisherman actually ask me, and that's happened a number of times now, that the fishermen actually say, "Oh, I really quite fancy doing that." And especially if they're 2 weeks and they can come, because there's no fishing on Sunday, so they can actually come on their Sunday off. And and that's really good. And so I've met some lovely fishermen on the river as well, and it means they see more of the river, because when they go fishing, they only see maybe the beats they're fishing.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing, that they're actually seeing more of the river. And I have had fishermen who've come on longer trips, so maybe 3 or 4 day trips, so they are seeing just how beautiful other parts of the river are. So yeah.
I tried fly fishing when we opened the River Dawn, and the lovely gentleman, I think he teaches fly fishing, but he took me over to the side and he said, "Right, don't worry, there's no hook on it, so you can't accidentally catch anything." So like my first cast, I literally just got it stuck in the riverbank. He said, "Well, I didn't think anybody could catch anything, but there you go."
Wasn't a guy called Ian Gordon, was it?
Oh, I wish I could remember. A really lovely gentleman. I've got a photograph of him somewhere, but really patient, really lovely.
It wasn't Ian Gordon then, no. He's a good bloke. I wouldn't call him a lovely gentleman. Sorry, Ian, if you're listening, but no. But he's a great guy. He was a gillie at Nakando for years, and he was another one didn't like us when we first started paddling. But then years on, I remember I was in Brewater again coming down, and I saw Ian River left with a client, and he actually waved me ashore. So I got my group in, and Eddie went ashore. He shook my hand, and he said he was a Finnish client. He said, "David, this is my guest from Finland." And he turned to him and he said, "I'd just like to say to you, when I first met this man, I didn't like him or what he did." He said, "But over the years, I've just realised that actually we have so much in common. And the main thing is we both have a passion for this river. So he does what he does well, and I do well." And he said, "Now I consider him a good friend." So that was it. But Ian is an international fly fishing expert, and he teaches. He's now a sort of peripatetic gillie, and he gillies abroad, and he goes to Norway and that sort of things as well. But he's a lot on the rivers that Devon and the Don. So I just wonder if it was maybe him that you had there. But
maybe could have been. But yeah, really interesting. Listening to you talking, I've just written down this. So I love the written word, and I'm always writing down little quotes and phrases that people say. I don't know why. I'm like this little magpie, and I keep them. I've written down so many things you've said. Have you ever thought about just writing your memoirs? Because honestly, I would buy it. Like, you're a treasure trove of beautiful little expressions I don't even know that you're aware you're saying, because they're not contrived. They're just coming out of you. It's lovely to hear. Please write your memoirs. I won't buy it. I'll write your memoirs.
It's like people say that I take nice photographs of the Spey, but it's like if I was sort of a photographer taking photographs of models, then if you've got a good model, and it's easy to take a photograph. So working with Lady Spey, I had a wonderful model, so it's easy to get photographs of it. So, but that's thing about
there
my
you
memoir.
go again. You've just done it again. I'm just going to write that one down as well.
That's the title of your memoirs, Working with Lady Spey.
Yeah, well, no, I think I've got my Spirit of the Spey is trademarked, and I remember I was going out with a group from a distillery I used to work with called Macallan, but one of the managers in the minibus, when we were off, they were going to take them on the river, and he realised that my company was Spirit of the Spey, and he actually asked, did you get that name? And I said, well, I have it, and so I have it. So yeah, Spirit of the Spey is my name. So I feel again very privileged to have that. But if I write a book, and I don't know if you were listening in, I did message him to tell him I was going to be doing this tonight, and or he maybe said, "Look, I've heard it all before, so I'm not going to bother." But a chap called Professor Dr. Robbie Nichol, who is a professor, or was a professor in Emory University, who's been a great support of my work and as well, and he keeps saying, "Dave, when are you writing the book?" So if Robbie said I should write a book, then I think, well, maybe I should. And I said, Robbie, there's no way I can sit down at a computer and write a book. He said, no. He said, Dave Craig doesn't write a book. Dave Craig talks a book. So I don't know what he meant by that. Yeah. But anyway, and I can't think why he would say that. But that would be the plan, that Robbie has agreed that he will come on the river with me, and we'll probably get some sort of dictaphone type thing that I'll strap to my neck. And then he said, you just talk to me as if you're talking to a client, and we're going to start at Loch Spey and work our way down, and I'll just speak my book, and then some poor person will then have to to write it, put it in words.
Oh.
So yeah, so
Make that happen, please. I'll bloody write it for you. It's that has to happen. Please do.
Yeah.
Because I'm
So
sure everyone here in
that,
the chat's going to buy it as well.
Yeah. So I would need to. I don't know if I ever sell the trademark or whatever I do with it, but I mean, I've taken all my other decals off my bus, my van, but I've left. People said, "Oh, just leave on Spirit of the Spey." In fact, I thought Emmy might want to take over the Spirit of the Spey. She said, "No," she said, "I can't be Spirit of the Spey." And I was very touched when she said this. She said, "No," she said, "While you're with this earth, no one else can be Spirit of the Spey." So I was very flattered by that. So, yeah, but the book, if I do get round to writing this book that Robbie keeps insisting I should write, then I think I would just call that Spirit of the Spey. Yeah.
100%. And when it is written, you're going to come back on the chat, and we're going to. You have to. Oh, that'd be amazing. We'll get you doing like a little book tour. You can go up to Mike's bar and do a little in person. Although I think Mike's frozen.
Yeah.
I do believe we've lost Mike. Either that or he's sitting very, very still. But I think Mike's camera might have frozen. But yeah, definitely get you. Oh yeah, Mike's now disappeared. So he's done a little magic trick and disappeared.
Yes, he was way getting around.
No signal, so I've just gone and topped up my water.
That was so funny. You were literally frozen for ages, and then you kind of disappeared, and then you reappeared. It was like a magic trick, like AI or like a green screen.
Yeah,
this is what I poured tonight. The space. I was looking for a nice kind of generic. I've got a couple of Glenallachys here as well, which we've talked about. I forgot how good this whiskey is. It's an AD Rattray. It's an independently bottled Secret Speyside.
Secret, so you'll know where it's from, but you can't tell us.
I don't know 100% where it's from. Sherry finish. I think it's Glenfarclas.
Right. Right.
But I couldn't confirm that.
But it's just an independent bottling.
Independently bottled, yeah.
Right.
It's a core range by AD Rattray. They do Cask Isla, they do Cask Orkney, and they do Cask Speyside. The Orkney one's easy to guess. It's not Scapa.
Right.
But that one's a little bit more. But it's such an easy going, 46%. I've just been sipping away nicely at it tonight. Are you having a dram, David? I haven't seen if you've been joining us on a.
No, I won't. I've had a bit of a health issue this year, and so I've been advised to not drink at the moment. I'm hoping that's not forever, but anyway, okay. I think I'm very, very tempted. I was tempted tonight. I thought, no, I'll just leave it for the moment. But yeah, which it's having these bottles with a bit left in them, it's very, very tempting. But
I know, I can imagine looking at them every day, thinking, it would be fine.
Yeah,
I just know
it's for the best, and it's it's just one of these things. Yeah, but
no, that's fair enough, definitely.
But
not too long now.
But then, if you were going to say what would I have, then that's tricky as well. But I am a bit of a sherry monster. I think that's why, again, I'm glad Andrew was right, and Tamdhu was one of the ones I worked with, because I think some of the Tamdhus are just, for me, they're just so good. I mean, I just love the fact they're actually matured in all our sherry casks, and I think their batch strengths, I think in particular, once you get the right amount of water in it, they're absolute like nectar, and So, but I mean, 15-year-olds, I think the Glenallachie 15-year-old is very good as well, and I said the Speyburn 15, so. Yeah, I seem to like a 15-year-old, but there's a lot.
15-year-old in sherry cask. You're talking my language.
Yeah, and I mean that's actually a 15-year-old Tamdhu that's up there as well. So thanks to Ian Weir for that. So so I had to say, I hope we don't. I mean, Ian in particular said he doesn't want to lose contact, and did say if there's anything he can do, then, and I say so I might continue doing whiskey tastings of some description. Because people do ask for that, so it just means I wouldn't have a canoe under me, but that I think it's when we put that. I'm sorry I didn't do more on social media. I would confess if I had the link earlier, I would have done more. But that picture I put on today onto my story, I think you shared that, Kat. That's my whiskey top. I've got a wooden top that I put in top. A friend of mine in the village here, carpenter friend Fraser, he made a top for my canoe, and so that's my bar and that's during the Whisky Festival. I do that because I haven't just got these agings. I've got other agings or other types of finish and so on. And so I think last year we put out about 24 different whiskies on and that picture I used. That's actually, it was a rainy day. So what we do is we just slide the canoe into my teepee. So that was a picture taken of my range of whiskies, and my Balvenie dipping dog, I think is in that one as well. And that was it, shoved into the teepee because it was raining. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Total experience. I'll definitely need to try and get over and see you at Speyside, because especially if it's your last official one, but it'd be also awesome to meet you in person as well. Hear some more of your stories. Could imagine the more we speak to you, the more stories are going to appear, because I still can't believe. When did you say that you came over and you started in River Spey? 1976, did you say? There's no way.
When did I come over? What?
Start working on the River Spey. What was the
first paddle of Spain in 65.
There's just no way you're that old. That's ridiculous.
I was a mere embryo.
Just a wee salmon spawn.
No. I mean, we joined the Sea Cadets when we were 12, and this guy, Bill Sheriff's, the community worker guy, we met him about probably shortly after that in the early 60s, and then he knew we all liked water sports, so he invited us. We felt really cool actually at that stage in our lives, because he had a Ford Anglia, a bit like is seen in
Harry Potter.
In Harry Potter, the Harry Potter type Anglia, and we could fit 4 kayaks on the roof of his Anglia. So we felt really cool driving about Kincardineshire with these 4 kayaks on our way up to the Dee. So that was kind of the start of that. So I started that but I think I came to the Spain in about 65, and that's when I thought, wait a minute, I like the Dee, but this river is different. And that's, as I say, that's when Lady Spey and I started a relationship. So it's been a relationship since 1965, on and off.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What a fantastic career, and you must be so proud of what you've built up. And I only wish I kind of got to know you sooner, because it's something I definitely would have wanted to come and try. I've never tried canoeing or kayaking. My kids learned how to do it in the West Coast, but I've never tried. I've never learned to do it. So yeah, it would have been awesome to come out one year.
I mean, people say, "Oh, I can't swim," and that sort of stuff, and they're a bit afraid of water. But the Spey's very forgiving, and particularly if you go with someone who's going to guide. I mean, you should just maybe catch up with Emmy at some stage, and she's lovely, and she would give you a good trip. And I know your Glengarry's not Speyside, but at the same time, it is great for your clients as well, just to experience the Spey. And okay, as I said earlier, and we can only visit a limited number of distilleries, but you see quite a few of them. I mean, it depends where you start from, but I mean, certainly. The cairn now is, if you start high up, the cairn's so near the Spey, you can see it very easily. Tam Dhu, you're seeing, okay, it's not the bonniest, but and then you can then tell. I mean, you can say that Del Ewan. You can see Dalmunach very clearly from the river. Del Ewan's over there. Then Aberlour's up there, and then you see the Macallan up there. One of the interesting days I had was with guy called Ludo de Crook. Don't know if you know Ludo. He, I think it's still, or certainly last time I knew him, was the brand ambassador for Grant's blend, and he wanted to bring his fellow international ambassadors on the Spey with me, and we had a great day. And what he wanted to do was, he said, "I want you to take us a trip where we see most distilleries." And so I think we started about Tam Dhu perhaps, and went on down, and he said, "Could we get as far as Achrusk?" And I said, "Well, I think so, but why do you want to see them? Because they're not Wally Grant's distilleries." And he said, "Yeah, but that's when I learned that blends are not just from the parent company; they come from." He said, "No." He said, "We use 46 distilleries to go into the grants. And he said that's the skill of the malt master, that they can take maybe from your distillery this month, but then we'll take from your similar nature to that one next month, and how they blend them. And he said, but they get the same blend all the time, but they may be from different distilleries. And I find that fascinating.
That's great,
that was a learning experience for me that day with Ludo. Yeah.
Actually, I've got a Prusk here from Lady of the Glen, re-sample to try. It's an Amanthania sherry cask finish.
Yeah.
I'll have that later on.
Yeah.
Mark, what a suggestion.
I think one of the best things Diageo ever did was their flora and fauna range. I mean, some of them, I mean, like the Dufton and the Petit Veich and the Dalyuen. I thought they were just superb whiskies, and it was really nice that distilleries that are not normally producing malts produced for the flora and fauna range, and must be great to have a full collection of them. I think the only place we can get that locally is in the Highlander now, isn't it? They've got the full collection.
Highlander have the full collection, yeah. The Dalyuen, I think, was just is phenomenal, and the Ben Rinnes was another of my favourites. I really like that one. Big kind of meaty shit cask.
That one.
Yeah.
I got that one from Lochnagar a couple of weeks ago. It's good.
You got it, yeah.
Lochnagar had a sale on.
Again, like Dalyuen, I think, was one of the best, and the Dufton was. I think they were just. But were they both 16s? They were certainly well aged, I think.
The Dalyuen certainly 16. I'm not sure about the Dufton. Ben Rinnes was 15.
Maybe it's 15. Yeah. But that was a great range to have. Yeah. Remember, we used to go to the Highlander when I was still camping. It's not the Highlander. We used to go to see Joe in the Fiddleside Inn, and my clients just loved being in the Fiddleside Inn with Joe. He was just so brilliant, and I remember that was the first time I came across Petit Veich because I went in there one night, and he said, "So, what kind of thing do you like in your whiskey?" And I said, "Well, I do like something that's got a sherry influence and all the rest of it." So I thought Petit Veich was great, and it's such a shame that it was demolished. I think it was a bit premature to demolish Petit Veich. I mean, anyway,
it's probably one of those you see a lot of them being resurrected, the Port Ellen and Brora and such like at Rosebank. I think Petit Veich is probably one. If the site was still there, it would have been one that would be reborn in the recent trend.
Absolutely,
because it's such a good spirit, and people really have a hankering for it.
Yeah, but right down to even the drawings on the bottles. I mean, these pen and ink drawings were just lovely. Yeah, so that was genius. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Mark Watt is saying, let's do the trip. Do it as a trip, Blether on the Spey. That could be fun. The three of us going down the Spey. We'll do this chat live.
All right. Well, I probably could do that still. I mean, I'm just not doing. It's just a big group thing because I love what I did, but the thing a lot of people don't realise is if I do a 3-day trip, it's actually 6 days work because you've got a day and a half at least setting up, and especially if you get wet weather. And the thing is that sometimes you used to say, "Okay, I should have stuck to mountaineering where I turn up with my boots and my rope and my rucksack." And then the clients turn up with their boots and their rope and their rucksack, and that's it. Whereas for canoeing and the way I do it, you can turn up if you went on a Spey day, and I'm doing that for Emmy this year because she's going to lead the river trip. But we'll take some of my kit, and we can clothe you from the underwear. We've got fleeces, we've got fleece trousers, we've got waterproof over trousers, and we've got your buoyancy aids, paddles, all the rest of it, hats, gloves if you want them. It's a chilly day. But then, of course, when they all get wet, and I encourage people to take them footwear as well, because especially with the festival, people are staying in hotels, so it's not really good that they've got to go back to the hotel with a lot of wet kit. So we try and encourage them to actually take the stuff, which is then us cutting off our nose to spite our face because we've got to come back and dry it all. But that's just part of the game. But that's one of the things that I was getting that wee bit kind of, and also there's a shortage of hotels in Speyside, although it's a hugely popular whiskey tourist area. We still are short. I mean, I was juggling all the time. Like, and Cragmore House is no more because Tony and Helen have actually retired. So if I go from Granton, there's nowhere really in that area. You've got Dalnashach, but that's not on the river. You still got to go up to it. And then the next nearest is probably the lovely Cardew House, which is another place run by lovely people. But then you've got to get from the river up the hill to there and this sort of stuff. So, and then even in Craigellachie, you've got the Highlander, which I still think is brilliant. And I'm afraid that my budget didn't extend to Craigellachie Hotel, because I think, what I was charging was sort of at the highest level I could charge. But, Jodie and Scott were very good with their rates there, and it's such a lovely place to be. But some days I have to say to the guests, right, okay, you want to come Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but I can't get that. Can you come the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? And so all the time you're juggling. So the setting up of the accommodations was a lengthy process, and so was the clearing up process. So that was the bit I started getting a wee bit kind of tired of, I think. Yeah.
So when you kind of, a client gets in touch with you, is the first thing you kind of look at is the accommodation. Say, can we get accommodation for these 3 days? And then everything else kind of follows it on suit. And was every kind of tour different? Would you bespoke the tours to the customer? Like you said, you did that for them.
I mean, there was a fundamental thread. That's what I said to people when I was getting a descriptor of what they're doing. There's a thread runs through it, but they were all different. So I would try and take them to the distillery I wanted to go to and that sort of stuff. And the people are different. They had different expectations, aspirations, but no. And then the river might be different height. So I would go as far as to say that I probably have done about, I think now the best part of 400 descents of the river. Some of them from Kincraig, some of them from Abbeymoor, some of them from Granton. And very few of them, there's none of them are identical. They all end up being different for some reason or another, But I say, there was a thread went through it, and that was for sure. And especially when at Craggamore House, that was, I mean, the camping thing was easier in a way, except you had more tents to dry and things. But in terms of actually being able to guarantee a guest the dates they wanted, then that was easier because you could camp, whenever you wanted to. And that's the other thing people need to realise. You can camp anywhere that's reasonable, responsible, and what's the other I forgot.
Respectful.
Yeah, but reasonable, responsible, and respectful, responsible, and reasonable. Yeah, that's it. So, I mean, you can even camp on the Gillies don't like when I say this, but you can actually camp on the mown lawns along the river, because that's not curtilage. As long as you don't camp too near a house, or you're supposed to stay away from roads as well, but you wouldn't camp near a fishing hut. But the mown, all these miles of mown banks, especially in some of the middle estates, you can camp on that. And so you can camp wherever. But I tended to camp where there were toilets, so I tended to use a campsite at a place called Ballyfirth, which is just an approach to Granton, run by a couple. He was a joiner and a shepherd, and so they had a lean-to toilet, and they were really kind because they put a hand towel in and they put toilet rolls in, this sort of stuff, and they charged, when I was going there, $3.50 a night, which I thought was very reasonable. And then when we got to Cragganmore, if I wasn't using the Cragganmore house, then we'd camp up beside the station, and there was a toilet there, which Moray Council did at one stage look after, but I think they stopped doing that, but now they've got Portaloos. And then there was the brilliant campsite at Craigellachie, which sadly Moray Council closed as well, and it had a really old but excellent toilet, which was kept immaculate by a gentleman. I think was his name, was he a John? And he came along and he cleaned it immaculately. It was just great. But they closed that and they stopped cutting the grass. So that was a bit of a sadness. But I'd stopped camping by that time anyway, so I was in hotels. And it is, the great thing about hotels is, even if someone is a capsize, which is not beyond the realms of possibility, then we'd have spare clothes, they have spare clothes, we could kit people up with a bit dry clothes. But it was just nice that we're going to go to a hotel because they could have a bath or a shower or whatever else. So the hotels were the way to do it. Yeah. But that's the thing that not many people are doing. So most other people, you asked earlier on who else does this, other people do it, but they tend to still camp. I think I was the kind of unique high-end one. Yeah.
It sounds like it was great fun.
No, it was hellish,
Yeah.
but somebody had to do it,
Well, you soldiered on. Well done, you.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Amazing.
I'm only
But no.
35 actually, by the hard paper ring.
Oh, I know you've got some absolutely fantastic stories, and the chat coming through is amazing. It's just kept everybody really engaged all night. But I'm aware we've kept you for nearly 2 hours of your evening. So, we don't want to keep you. I know, but it's just been such a natural chat. It's been absolutely awesome, and you're welcome back on the Blether anytime you fancy it. Honestly, you don't need to write a book to come back on either.
Right. Well, that's very good. Yeah. So, thank you for inviting me. It's been a privilege to be amongst these whiskey gods that you've spoken to in the past, and yeah. No, I mean, and the thing is, it's easy. If you ask me to talk about the Spey, and you have done so, I could, bore the hindlines of a donkey with it. But it has been my life, and I just love it, and and yeah, again, if it's a finish, and I'll say I feel very privileged to have done what I've done, and being able to give so many people pleasure in the outdoors, it's just fantastic, and it was a privilege to share it, and that's the thing. It was just sharing the river, sharing the whiskies, just sharing the scenery, and arriving at the sea as well. That's something I haven't actually mentioned. That you arrive at the sea, and there's something quite cathartic about that. If you spend 3 or 4 or 5 days on fresh water on the Spey, and then where she then gives her water to the sea, that's fantastic. And the topography at the beach has changed a lot. There's lots of it's almost like the beach at Tugnet is actually growing. There's more and more shingle. You used to be able to come down and you could actually get into the waves, whereas it's now so far away, especially at low tide, to get to the actual sea, that in the last couple of years I haven't done that for a long time, just because it's a long chav to get back up to where you need to be to unload, or you've got to walk the boats over the shingle, which isn't easy. So yeah.
I mean, it's fantastic because, Scotch whisky and terroir, or the landscape, or the rivers, they're so intertwined and have been for hundreds of years. So the fact you were that bridge between those two things and allowed people to experience whisky in a whole other way, I think is absolutely fantastic.
Well, I often say
you
that,
hear that in the way.
Yeah, but I mean, although no one takes their water for the whisky from the main stem, as everyone listening to this probably know, they're all from the springs and the tributaries. It still is the main artery of the whisky industry, and it's the lifeblood of the whisky industry. And my sadness is that silly man Beeching closed the railway line in 1964, because that was the other artery for the whisky industry, because it was bringing the barley in, it was bringing the coal in, it was taking the whisky away, it was taking the cattle south to the cattle market. So he obviously just looked at the bottom line and had no thought for the actual practical application of that railway line. And think about it now for tourism. I always say, if I ever won the Euro Millions, which is unlikely because I don't play it, but really, I always say, if I won the Euro Millions, the thing I would do is I would reinstate the Speyside line. I just think, imagine tourism being able to puff your way through Speyside, and the fact that so many distilleries had their own sidings, and you could actually park in the siding and visit. I mean, visiting distilleries from a canoe is one thing, but I have to say, doing it from a train as well, especially a steam train, that would be pretty magical as well. So when I do win the Euro Millions, and that's bugger the book, I'll just do the Speyside railway line.
Maybe if you write the book, then you'll make your millions off of that.
No, I don't think so. You don't make millions. I know enough people. My friend Robbie Nicol, who is encouraging, he's written a book, but he claims that you don't make anything from writing books, and I wouldn't write it for that. I'd just be, again, this sounds a bit twee to say it, but it would just be part of my sharing again, I think, really. Like tonight, really. So it's been a pleasure.
Absolutely awesome. Thank you so much. I enjoyed it so much. It's been you're a natural storyteller, so it's been very easy for me, Mike, to just sit back and listen, which I absolutely love. I've had the best couple of hours.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I mentioned my date with Amy Irons. We actually met at the Hotel, I think it is, in Forest the night before, and we're chatting over a drink over a table. And we went to the van to give her our buoyancy and so on for the next day, because we're going to start at 6:30 in the morning. And she said, you know, Dave, she said, there's some people that I think now, how can I get them to start a conversation? She said, but I just don't think there's any problem with you. And she said, I just think we'll blether. So there you are.
There you go.
She said, well, just blether. Yeah. Yeah. And that's
You're
what
a
we
very,
do.
very easy man to blether to, Dave. It's been the easiest chat me and Kat have had. We haven't had to say very much or kind of push conversation at all. You've just, as Kat said, a natural storyteller, and it's been an
about the
absolute
speed,
pleasure
so
to have you sharing your stories.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me. It's been a privilege. Yeah.
Thank you
For
so much.
next week, for everyone who's tuning in next week, we've got Fib Whisky on next week. So we've got the guys from Fib Whisky joining us. So come and see us again next week at 7:30, and we'll see you all.
So they'll be at the festival, aren't they? They're at Leith Festival, or they were last year. They're going to be back.
So we'll catch them before they head off to the festival, which will be nice. So yeah, I bumped into them at Glasgow Whisky Festival, and Mr. McKendrick, I'm just utilising Mr. McKendrick in all sorts of ways. He got us in touch, so we're going to get the guys over. And they did a really cool, Mike, you'll love this, they did a really cool Pictish branding, don't they? So
Yes,
you'll get all
do.
kind of geeky with your standing stones and your Pictish symbols. So it's going to be cool.
Okay, well, if we don't see you here from before, I might see you in the afternoon on the riverbank, 1st of May, beside the Telford Bridge.
100%. We're going to come and find you on 1st of May. I'm going to write that down, and I'm going to make sure I can come and find you and say hello to you properly. It'll be awesome to do that.
Okay. Right.
Thank you so much, Dave. Thank you, Kat. We will see you next week. Well, I'll see you, Kat. I'll see you tomorrow. We have our in-house blethering tasting with Glengarry. So hopefully some of the guys are coming along to that.
Maybe we need to visit Glengarry one day.
Please do. Please do. Anytime. Yeah, anytime you're going past, just drop me a message, and I'd be very glad to show you around. 100%. That can happen anytime you're going past.
Okay. Thank you.
Perfect.
Right, we'll let you get away. Thanks so much.
Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good night all, and have a great weekend.
Slange.